Time to have a discussion, time to have a discussion with a thinker. We have Joel Patterson, founder of the Vested Group, joining us tonight to talk about the possibility that millennials and Gen Z's days of working remotely are coming to an end. Joel, say it isn't so.
You never know what's going to happen these days, right, Stacy? But it's certainly a possibility, I would say.
So, for a lot of people, their main focus is on the benefits of working from home in that you don't have to commute. On your lunch break, you can knock out a couple loads of laundry. You know, your productivity is not contingent upon actually being within earshot or eyeshot of your boss. Yet, there is something else that happens in the workplace that we kind of take for granted, and that is relationship building, networking, and FaceTime with those who might mentor you and lead you to that next opportunity.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And if you look back a couple of years ago when we kind of first started on this adventure of COVID and working from home and just kind of reestablishing what it means to have a career in sort of the business world, one of the things we worried about most was what happens with culture, or what happens with that personal connection. How do you develop relationships? There's so many of these things that we knew going into it we wouldn't be able to figure out. And I think 2 years in, 2.5 years, getting there, we're recognizing that, hey, those things were important, especially for the people that are a little bit younger. Imagine, starting your first job out of college and not meeting anybody for 2 years. It's really hard to kind of put your head around that, knowing how important those relationships are to not just that job, but future jobs. Those mentors, those informal mentors that you run across in everyday life. The water cooler talk, whatever you want to call it. The reality is there are a lot of those situations that don't happen now that as we call it a recession, call it whatever you want, as our economy shifts a little bit, those things all of a sudden become more important, not because you want to give them to them, but because, well, does the leverage change, or does the perspective on that change? And is it more likely that people are going to go back to the office? I think those are the things that we're kind of working through now, as things shift. But you know what? We made it through COVID for pretty well over the last couple of years, and a recession ahead of us doesn't necessarily scare me, but it certainly makes you kind of step back, evaluate where you are, and the mix of people that you have, and make sure that you're keeping them engaged if they're important to you. I just think that there's just a whole new dynamic that's about to come into play that we haven't quite figured out yet.
So could it be that if there are layoffs because of a recession, that the people who haven't actually ever met their boss in person or know the least number of people in the workplace, they would be the ones who would be easier to sacrifice? Is that one of the concerns here?
Absolutely. And, depending on which side of the fence you are on that, clearly if you are somebody that's in the office every single day and you're interacting with your supervisor or anybody in the office, you're just going to be top of mind. It's not necessarily even that you are that somebody is intentionally trying to remove you from that decision criteria, but the reality is you're just not there. And that is going to work against you, even if there's a stated policy that that's not the case. I mean, it's just reality. And for the younger people that maybe haven't been in the workforce for 5 years and kind of have a sense for how that stuff works in business, I don't think that they have the luxury of being able to fall back on, okay, I just know I need to focus on this relationship or this one. It's just going to be a tough time for them to figure that out.
Yeah, it is. And I also want to say this same concept works everywhere. It's the reason why stay-at-home moms devote themselves to volunteering in the classroom during the grammar school years. They want to spend time with their kids. They want to see what's going on in the building. But they also know if there's a problem and they've volunteered, the teacher is much more likely to reach out to them to have some kind of comfortability with them if they have to tell them something difficult about their child, or that their child has a special need or is struggling with something. They're much more likely to communicate because they've seen that parent's face, they've interacted with them. It doesn't have to be a ton of volunteering. It's just a few trips into the classroom and the teacher has a rapport. So FaceTime actually is something that was highly prized and valued before the pandemic, and I guess you're possibly saying it's going to return to extreme popularity because of the possibility of the recession.
Yeah, I think that analogy is great. I haven't heard that one before. I think that's exactly what I'm trying to say. It's not necessarily that you have to be there all the time. I mean, I think everybody's gotten to their head around, okay, this is going to be some kind of mix. Again, this goes back to assuming that you're in a job where you can be remote, because a lot of people can't. But being able to just step back and say, if you're top of mind, or if you you ring somebody's bell just the right time, I mean, it's those little interactions that'll make a difference, and that's what we're missing. Zoom calls are kind of the opposite of that, right? I mean, when you think about a Zoom call, really, would you ever sit in a meeting where you were sitting 2 feet across from that person and staring at their face the whole time? I mean, just that, it creates an unnatural sort of dynamic, and those are the things that we've kind of gotten used to over the last couple of years. And now, much like the economy, where all of a sudden, wow, the supply chain is important, right? We got to get back to basics. I think with our employees, with culture, we got to do that same stuff, and we got to recognize that, hey, these are people, and they need those personal interactions. That's kind of how how our society has worked over the millennia, and we've got to get back to that in order for people to feel connected. And I want to make sure there's plenty of people out there that I'm sure they're saying, oh, well, I don't need that. And there are those people. I mean, we employ some of them. I mean, I'll tell you, just developers, people that just sling code for a living, they are better suited, not by themselves, but being able to get into in a space where they can work without any interruption for 2 to 3 hours. That's how they love to work. And sometimes working at home is better suited for that, right? But we want to get them in the office as much as we can, too, because even if they don't necessarily gravitate towards it, those social interactions are just as important for them.
Yeah, and the other thing is when it becomes, a difficult time at work, it doesn't have to be layoffs. It can just be transitions, huge build-outs, creating a new dual redundancy network at a office space. Anything that requires a huge project with an extended timeline, you're going to work better with people that you've actually met before. And so you're right, the Zoom environment is kind of weird. Everyone has a fake background. Everyone is kind of basically play acting from the waist up. Underneath there's pajama pants, there's yoga pants or something like going on. And then there's the issue of kind of just showing that side of yourself that you present on the Zoom, as opposed to in the real office environment, we see each other at our best and our worst. We see, when someone's coming down with something, when you're working in the office together, you see them start to look run down, and then you see them start to kind of sniffle a little bit, and then you're like, hey, you need to leave because you look sickly. And there's also the pictures, the kind of kitschy stuff that goes around the desk or the cubicle or the office. So you get a snapshot into their lives, whether it's what they eat for lunch or the kind of clothes that they wear. You can develop a fuller picture of who someone is if you see them in person than you can if they are only on Zooms. So it doesn't mean that you can't have good working relationships with people and that everyone needs to return to the office, but there are some benefits to seeing people in person that cannot be replicated over frequent Zoom meetings. And I guess that's one of the trade-offs. So are you recommending that people kind of assess that and decide if they really want to be Zoom only? Are you recommending that everyone that spend at least a little bit of time in the office? Where do you come down on this?
Well, I'm really just recommending that people kind of step back, no matter where they've been over the last 18 months or 2 years. Really step back and look at your career and think about what you want. If the most important thing for you is to be able to be home as much as possible, and to be able to be there for somebody that shows up to fix the table or whatever, then you might want to kind of recognize that and realize that in this day and age and where we're kind of sliding to now, that might work against you. That's all. And that might be okay with you, right? I mean, that might be perfectly fine with you. It's worth that. But I think we've been in this kind of very unique situation where the employees had a lot of leverage based on where they were going to work, based on the hours they want to work, based on the type of work they want to do. We had the Great Resignation, which was kind of the result of a lot of that. And as we move forward out of that phase, I just think people need to step back and say, okay, what is important to me? And I want to find a business that is kind of like-minded, because I can tell you there are a lot of companies out there that are built much like mine is, where we want people to be together as much as possible, recognizing they're not going to be there 2 or 3 days of the week. But we know the collaboration, the ideation, all those things are super important to our business, and those are the kind of people we're going to search for. And there might be people that don't fit that mold, and that's okay. I think we've just really kind of gotten into now where everybody could do kind of whatever they wanted in sort of a weird way in the last year or two, to now being back to sliding back to, okay, let's see what makes sense. Let's find a business and a culture that makes sense, and let's kind of work towards this common kind of purpose, and not be at odds all the time about whether or not, is work from home going to last? Right? All those other things that have happened. I think there's just a lot of opportunity still. And I'll also mention this. We talk about where you hear a lot of reports around media and where the economy is. And I'm telling you, our business is busy. The labor market is incredibly tight still. My clients are busy. I don't see a lot of that. And it feels like a lot of the things we hear about now are just a lot of companies that overbuilt during the last 18 months and are now paying the price for it. So I don't know what the future holds, but I do know that in the near term, there's still a lot of demand for really good quality employees that want to contribute, want to be part of something special, and there's a lot of good businesses out there that are looking for them. So step back, take a look at what you want to really accomplish, and I'll bet an opportunity is out there that will provide that for you.
I love that. Okay, so Joel Patterson is our guest right now, if you're just tuning in. He's the founder of the Vested Group, at Joel Patterson _ on Twitter. And I love that you're basically putting the employee back in the driver's seat, and you're saying, you kind of have to know yourself. You have to know what is your primary, let me maybe put them into buckets of 3, top 3, mid 3, bottom 3 in order of importance. And then basically you're going for a position that suits those needs. And for some people, remote work is the end goal. It suits their lifestyle to such a degree that they would rather leave their workplace and find one that will allow them to be remote. But for other people, they're looking down the road at career advancement, and there may be a remote work situation that follows that path or will lead them there. But there may be times in their work life where working in the office at least a couple of days a week is going to help them to advance to the next step. And so you're saying you have to be cognizant of that.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. It's really, I think that what the Great Resignation taught me, at least, is that everybody kept wondering, okay, where did all these people go, right? There was millions of people that all of a sudden were out of the workforce, and a lot of them just decided they were done. They were maybe approaching retirement or got a severance package. But a lot of people just wanted to go start a business or try something completely new and use that as an opportunity to go out on a limb. And really, I encourage that too, because now is the time to try something new, because everybody's going to look back and kind of wonder, what did you do during COVID? And it's given more control to the employee recently to allow them to really specialize in what they want to find or what they're looking for and what is going to fulfill their goals, and allowing them to just say, okay, that's actually out there. Let me go find that. Now, these days, as we hear more communication and more media about what's in front of us, I think that people might knee-jerk and really say, okay, well, that's not there anymore. I don't have an opportunity to do that. And I'm saying, based on the labor market, based on what I'm seeing in our business, you still got time. And so if you are still on the fence and don't really know what you want to do, take a look. The flip side of that is you always got to make sure that you're talking to your current employer as well, because what's happened a lot over the last couple of years is what we call boomerang employees, people that have left and realized the grass isn't greener and ended up back in the previous company. And there's nothing wrong with that sometimes, but it can create a lot of conflict. Some companies won't even do that. So make sure you're taking the time to really evaluate not just what else is out there, but what you've got in front of you right now, because more often than not, as we all know, the grass isn't greener. There's going to be price to pay for whether it's a salary or flexible work schedule or whatever it might be. You might have been able to get that stuff at your current job where you were actually happy and enjoyed the people you worked with. So, it's not a clear-cut decision for everyone, but I think that there's a path if you just kind of step back and really think about it a little bit there's still lots of opportunity.
So that is one thing that I think I can look back and say, should have asked first where I was. And I've also had that, I've seen that like develop out with a friend of mine who had an amazing job and moved someplace else for what she thought was an expansion, which ended up, it was, but she could have had that same thing in her old position. She just didn't realize, she didn't ask before she left. So that is such a great point. As we're closing out here, thank you so much, Joel, for joining us tonight. I'm on your website. It's thevested.com. It says, what can the Vested Group do for you? And then it has phase 0 implementation and support. So please tell us what, it says NetSuite, used by more than 29,000 organizations worldwide. What do you do at the Vested Group?
Yeah, so I'm the founder of the Vested Group, but what we do is we work with an Oracle product called NetSuite. And so everybody's heard of QuickBooks. And so when you start a new company, usually you'll implement QuickBooks to run your financials, your accounting. And when you grow and you outgrow QuickBooks and need it to do things that it can't do, you call us. And so we work with companies to really redefine how they run their business and implement what's called an ERP, a system that allows them to scale and grow beyond where they are now and, for the foreseeable future. So allows us to really experience a lot of different businesses and a lot of different industries, which is what I love about the job, and also allows us to really kind of keep our finger on the pulse of what's going on just in general industry, which is kind of what we're talking about today.
I love it. I love it. So you're helping people scale and grow beyond what their normal capacity is with QuickBooks, and that's just a part of it. Love the website. So grateful to have your insight here on helping people to kind of navigate this new reality. I don't think work from home goes away, Joel. I think what it does is it expands, it contracts in some areas, and it becomes even more tailored to the needs of the businesses that are willing to use it. Some industries cannot use work from home, but in other areas it can be a great tool to attract talent. I think your advice tonight has been excellent. Joel Patterson, founder of the Vested Group. The website is thevested.com. He's at Joel Patterson _ on Twitter. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Stacy. Really enjoyed it. Take care.
All right. Take care. Have a wonderful night.